Welcome to another video, and today I'm going to be showing 3 different types of stretching that you can use in your training. So let's get straight to the first type, which is going to be passive stretching. So passive stretching is probably the most common type of stretching that you'll see people do. This is normally where we rest in a position, we let gravity do the work, we get assistance from an external object rather than using our own strength to get into the stretch position. Now, the advantages of this type of stretching are that it's very accessible, it's very easy, and you will see people doing it. You can kind of do this every day. It's not very taxing on the nervous system. And basically what you want to look for is to just get into the stretch position and take your time, breathe deeply and calmly, and wait for that stretch reflex to decrease over time before you start making adjustments and moving further and increasing your range of motion. So it's a very straightforward form of stretching, but in terms of its effectiveness, we want to start using muscular contractions, which is going to be the second type we look at in the next clip. So if we want to start scaling up our stretching, one of the things we need to understand is that our muscles work in pairs. So for example, when my bicep flexes, my tricep has to extend, and there's a process called reciprocal inhibition which facilitates this, which basically makes our body work in a way where it doesn't work against itself. When something needs to contract, the other side will lengthen so that the muscles work in pairs together. Now, when we are stretching, we can use this to our advantage. For example, if you want to stretch your hips, our glutes are going to be the agonist in this position, and the hip is going to be the antagonist, which is going to relax. And if we contract the agonist, which will be the glutes, if we contract it hard and hold that contraction, we will actually facilitate further relaxation of the hip flexor. So this is just a brilliant way to get more out of your stretching in the same amount of time as you were doing in the passive, but now we're building strength and we're working with our nervous system to help relax the stretched area even more, and just to get that little bit more range of motion that we're looking for. So reciprocal inhibition is going to be contracting the opposite muscle to the muscle that's being stretched. Now, if we want to scale our stretching even more, there's one more advanced option that we can use, and it's known as PNF stretching. That is short for proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. And this is basically working directly with the fact that we have this stretch reflex. And what we're going to do is, if we contract the stretched muscle itself, we can temporarily override that stretch reflex. So how this works in practice is, again, if I use the hips as an example, it's quite an easy one to understand. If we get into a hip flexor stretch, for example, a standing hip flexor stretch, and if we temporarily contract our hip flexor, and in this example, it would be digging our toes into the ground and building that contraction on the anterior side of the hip, which is where the stretch is being felt. When we hold that contraction for, let's say, 5 to 10 seconds, and then we release, we immediately, just very, very temporarily, override that stretch reflex, that's occurring in our nervous system, and it allows us to get a little bit more range of motion after we release the contraction. So again, this is a little bit more advanced, and it can lead to bigger improvements in range of motion very, very quickly. But we need to understand that we need to be able to relax after the contraction, and we need to develop a mind-muscle connection so that we are actually contracting the stretch muscle itself and not something else. Now, PNF slightly differs from the other two, in my opinion, because it requires a bit more rest time. So you can only really do it 2 or 3 times a week. You shouldn't really do PNF, in my opinion, every day. It's quite difficult to recover from. It should be seen more similar to strength training, whereas the other forms of stretching you can kind of do every day. So there's your probably most advanced option for stretching. It can get you good results, but the principle is sound and it can work for anyone, even a beginner, as long as you know what you're doing. So there you have it. There's 3 forms of stretching. We've got the passive stretching, we've got reciprocal inhibition, and we've got PNF stretching. Now, depending on your goals, you can use all 3 of them. I think a complete stretching program will use all of them. If you are looking to make some advanced gains in particular movements, such as a pancake stretch or something that's a little bit more advanced, PNF can help out a lot. I think it's really important to start understanding that strength is so important when it comes to stretching. So We can use passive stretching, but always remember that we want to reinforce to our nervous system that we have the strength to support the position. And as I said before, the muscles work in pairs. So as we build the strength and we contract certain muscles, it's going to help us relax into the position even more. Stretching is all about the nervous system. So we need to be working with our nervous system as we are stretching if we want to improve our range of motion. So there's your three options. Keep those principles in mind at whatever stretch you're doing, and hopefully it can increase the effectiveness of what you're doing. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for more on stretching, strength training, mobility, running, calisthenics, everything that I've got in store, and I'll see you all on the next clip.